G'day everyone. We're going to do another one of these Corona lock-in things, catching up some old stuff. I know other people have covered this topic, but I've got the Vice article about it sitting up here, so let's have a look, shall we? Vice. Yeah. I try not to use Vice too much for anything, even to laugh at. As hospitals prepare for COVID-19, life-saving trans surgeries are delayed. And right away, I have a problem. Because there are lots of studies that show that this is not true, but I've got one up, so why not? Let's have a look. Long-term follow-up of transsexual persons undergoing sex reassignment surgery. Cohort study in Sweden. Now, if there is any country in the world that is progressive enough to give transsexual people the most pleasant life they could possibly expect before or after surgery, I would expect Sweden and its feminist government are doing quite well. But even though this study doesn't come up to the time of this current feminist government, there's no time that I know of where Sweden wasn't progressive enough to make these people feel comfortable in their skins. Anyway, the abstract, shall we? The context. The treatment of transsexualism in sex reassigned, including hormonal treatment and surgery aimed at making the person's body as congruent with the opposite sex as possible. There is a dearth of long-term follow-up studies after sex reassignment. The objective of this study is to estimate mortality, morbidity, and criminal rate after surgical sex reassignment of transsexual persons. The design is a population-based matched cohort study. It's covering from Sweden from 1973 to 2003. The participants were 324 sex reassigned persons, 191 male to female, 133 female to male in Sweden in 1973 to 2003. Random population controls 10 to 1 were matched by birth year and birth sex or reassigned final sex respectively. The main outcome measures, hazard ratio with 95 confident individuals for mortality and psychological mobility were obtained with Cox. Look, there's always some dicky stuff goes on with studies, and that's just to cover their asses there. But let's have a look, shall we? The results. The overall mortality for sex reassigned person was higher during follow-up. Higher. The mortality for sex reassigned persons was higher during follow-up than for the controls of the same birth sex, particularly death from suicide. Now, I know there are other studies that show the suicide rates for transsexual people either remains the same or is higher, and this one says higher. So this is not the only study showing this stuff, it's just the example I'm using. Sex reassigned persons also had an increased risk for suicide attempts and psychiatric inpatient care. So basically, they went more nuts as well. Comparisons with controls matched on reassigned sex yielded similar results. Female to male, but not male to female, had a higher risk of criminal convictions than their respective birth sex controls. Now, this is an interesting one because, you know, we men are so privileged. You would think that any woman becoming a man has nothing to worry about in her life. She's going to just breeze through life. And this is a major failing of the feminist theory, if this is true, that females who become male have higher rates of criminal conviction. It's almost like we men have things to battle with in our lives, and there might be a reason for some of our behaviours that's not simply because, I don't know, patriarchal control or whatever the fuck the feminists are on this today. But anyway, it turns out the females who become male have higher risk for criminal convictions. Anyway, the conclusion, because we will get there, and then we will head back to our story, remembering that we are looking at the fact that hospitals prepare for COVID-19 and life-saving trans surgeries are delayed. And so far, we've discovered nothing of the sort. What is the conclusion? Persons with transsexualism after sex reassignment have considerably higher risks of mortality, suicide behaviour, and psychiatric morbidity than the general public. Our finding, and they were already higher than the general public, so this is going quite out on a limb, isn't it? Out on a limb? I don't know. It's just, they were already higher. This has made it worse. Our findings suggest that sex reassignment, although alleviating gender dysphoria, may not suffice as a treatment for transsexualism and should inspire improved psychiatric and somatic care after sex reassignment for this patient group, or just do away with the surgery. They want to improve the psychiatric care of these people, but these people are already increasingly in psychiatric care. So the conclusion didn't quite draw the same way that I would have drawn this. Essentially, everything here says the surgery doesn't work. It doesn't fix the problem. So why would you suggest improving something which they are already more likely to be seeking after the surgery anyway? In any case, the persons with transsexualism after sex reassignment have considerably higher risk of morbidity, suicide behaviour, and psychiatric morbidity than the general population. So is this surgery life-saving? Can we say that this surgery is life-saving? I think the best thing to do is delay this surgery for the rest of your life. I think COVID-19 might be doing you a favour. Though medical facilities, we'll go back to the article, why not? Though medical facilities may soon become overtaxed for everyone, the coronavirus pandemic has shed light on how transgender people's care can be treated as non-essential. I would think we could even say that it is risky, dangerous. It's going to have a negative effect on you in a large number of cases. Non-essentials, hardly the word I'd use for it at all. I would say dangerous. For transgender and gender non-conforming people, this one means fucking idiots looking out to be noticed. It means nothing else. Gender-affirming surgery. Now, if you were only gender non-conforming, why would you want gender-affirming surgeries? This is something that is specifically for transgenderism. By the way, there's something I forgot to mention when we were doing that study thing. Two growth industries in the cosmetic surgery world. One is tattoo removal. The other is gender reassignment. So even though people are managing to survive, they are deciding that they did the wrong thing. Sometimes because the people who diagnosed them with gender dysphoria were in such a hurry to do so that they missed underlying mental issues. It's part of why I have a problem with this improved care after reassignment, because that's the wrong way to go. There obviously needs to be improved care before reassignment. In fact, to try and drive people or turn people away from reassignment. If you meet someone who isn't already suicidal and doesn't have these problems, but they want to transition, then maybe they're the ones you let do it. The ones with the mental problems, they're not getting better. The only thing this solves is gender dysphoria. What is gender dysphoria? How is it diagnosed? And what else could resemble gender dysphoria? Those are the questions that need to be asked before we go ahead cutting pieces off people. And by the way, I've always been a supporter of people cutting their pieces off if they really want. But when you write an article and tell me this is life-saving, I'm going to find issues with the entire claim, the stance behind this article. But in the midst of, for transgender and non-gender, but in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, trans communities on Reddit and Twitter, yes, important places to learn things, are being flooded with reports of postponed or cancelled surgeries in the US, UK, Spain, Thailand, and everywhere, leading to enormous stress and disappointment on the top of a global health crisis. Well, I don't give a flying fuck. Because you're just looking to get bits cut off you. This is a choice. It doesn't matter if you say that it's because it's going to fix some mental illness you have. It is still a choice to cut the bits off you rather than try and deal with your problem in a psychiatrist's office. The people who are catching this pandemic, they don't have a choice. They need the hospital space. This underscores a common experience amongst trans people seeking medical care or surgery. Researchers suggested that gender-affirming surgery in particular has a notable long-term impact on mental health. Yeah, apparently it gets worse. But far too often, trans people already wait for longer than is safe or healthy. No, maybe they should wait even longer, because that's what the study I've just gone through said in its findings, even if in its conclusion it tried to whitewash that. Further delays can be dangerous and even life-threatening. No, they can't. They really can't. If you put these people in a psychiatrist's office, they could probably talk their way through any of the problems that they're having to the point where stretching out their surgery for a bit longer is not going to hurt them. The people with COVID-19 do not have the luxury of going to somebody and talking their way through it. Violet Jones, a 29-year-old trans woman, an assistant professor in New York. Now we know why that education system's fucked up. But anyway, has a procedure scheduled for May and hasn't been cancelled yet. But she feels it's imminent. Well, good. Maybe you can get around to working out what your problem actually is. So anyway, I just wanted to point this out, that, the people who suffer when a pandemic comes are apparently the ones who are not actually going to be benefited by the surgery they're choosing to do, and that they should be allowed to take up the space in hospitals for people that have no other choice but to be there or die. So yes, this is all about the life-saving transition surgeries, and I will link all my material in the bar below as usual, with my crap that I spell out down below. I don't know. I don't know how these crazy people manage to get so far in life. I mean, don't people see the crazy come in and go, this person is not going to be in charge of anything around here? Fucking hell. Alright. I am going to have to give it I'm starting to ramble, so I'm going to call it quits. I've been the anti-theocrat. It's been another one of those things, and may gods remain fictional. I will see you in the next one, which should be tomorrow at this point. Have fun.